Hey there, Alex Basso here.
And Rudy, co-hosts of Game O'Clock.
Don't split the podcast network's premier video game show.
Every month, the two of us and a special guest go through a game genre's history, some of our favorites within it,
some of our least favorite games, and where we hope the genre goes moving forward. We've talked about shooters, MOBAs, classic adventure games, and even more.
If you like video games, you gotta check us out.
This is Tabletop Apple. I'm James Introcaso. Today I am talking with the amazing podcaster and game master for hire, Tim Mottishaw. Tim is just an inspiration. I had one of my greatest podcast conversations ever with this person. He is just so good at GMing, at podcasting, at being a great person. He is a big-time activist in the LGBTQ community, and so we talk about that a little bit. And we talk about how you can be a game master for hire. It is incredible. I can't wait to share this conversation, so I won't. Here it is. Okay, everybody, now I am here with a good friend of mine who I am super excited to finally have on Tabletop Babble. Tim Mottishaw, tell people who you are and what you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games.
Hey, I'm Tim. What do I do in the tabletop world? I run a lot of games. I'm a GM or judge at Gen Con and at Winter Fantasy. I'm a level 3 GM for Baldwin Games. Ooh, exciting. I have 3 podcasts that I am the host and GM of. One is for D&D. It's called Loose Ends. One is called Skyfire Comics, and that's a Icon superhero game by Steve Kenson. And then the third is Sky on Fire, and that's a Star Wars podcast that's in hiatus right now and just waiting for me to finish editing season 3 or 2. I also am on board to GM season 4 of Roll to Hit. It's a podcast on the Commentist Network, and that's where I air all of my podcasts. And I also am a professional GM here in Vancouver. So I get paid to run games and host events that are game related.
Yeah, that's it. You live the dream. You are living the dream as a paid GM.
I'm starting to, yeah. It's pretty cool.
So how did you get the idea of being a paid GM, and what made you think, I think all GMs at some point do a bunch of work and they think, man, I should be paid for this. But what made you think, this is actually a thing that I could get paid to do, and I'm going to do it? Where did that come from? How'd you get the idea?
Well, believe it or not, it took a lot of convincing. It's always been a contentious topic, right? Getting paid to GM is always one of those, it's kind of like going from indie to record label. It's one of those things that's sometimes looked at as oh, you totally sold out. I don't know if anyone knows, but Vancouver is one of the most expensive places in the world to live and exist. And you need 3 or 4 jobs usually to pay rent. And that's not an exaggeration. It's absolutely astronomical. And I'm a student at university, so I also don't have a lot of money. And then when Adventures League ended the regional coordinator program, and we needed to start paying for games, which is totally cool and understandable because I think authors should totally get paid for their games. I needed to start shelling out money, and that was fine. And then we decided that we would charge for the games at the gaming store that I run at, and it would just be $1 to play. So it's still very accessible and not limiting to anybody. And I wasn't harshcore with it. I just needed to make back the money that I was spending on the games. And one of the guys who plays with me regularly gave me the suggestion that, hey, I would pay you to run a game for us at home. What do you charge? And I'm nothing. But then I thought about it and I realized I already had 3 games on the go that I wasn't getting paid for, and time is very limited. So when it came right down to it, if I was going to do something that was another game, I would have to make money off of it, and I would have to be able to counter the loss of a shift at work, say, or so I had to make that balance somewhere. So I decided to come up with a pay scheme, and so far it's been pretty good response. I have one biweekly game. I have 2 events that I am hired for by the local gaming tavern. And I have a second biweekly game starting. Well, it'll be after this airs, but I have a second biweekly game starting. Yeah. So I'm on board to do more. And, if I can maybe monetize off of my podcasts, then I'm going to try and do that a little bit and sell some modules as I learn how to redo those better. And yeah, I'm like super picky, so I don't want to just dive right in and drop everything.
That's amazing, though. And I mean, obviously, Vancouver is super duper expensive. It's the Manhattan of Canada, if you will.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Our average price for a 1-bedroom apartment downtown just broached $1,700 a month.
Wow, and those are Canadian dollars. We should point out.
Yeah, but even in American dollars, that's still $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a lot of money.
It's a ton of money. It is a ton of money
for a 1-bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. For 600 square feet of living space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That is a super expensive place to live, and it's an interesting thing you talk about, this debate, right? People, I do think it's a controversial topic. I see it on Facebook and on the internet come up, right? About being paid to GM. And I think, the way I look at it is like, we pay people for all kinds of play, right? We pay streamers and podcasters and stuff through Patreon and through subscriptions on Twitch and that kind of thing. We pay sports players to play sports that they are very good at, and a GM provides a service. And so I think there are tons of Americans, right, who are playing, let's say, baseball, or people all over the world, really, we should say. Since you're in Canada, I need to lose my nationalism for a second.
That's okay. We're not playing baseball up here. Let's use soccer, because that's truly a world sport.
Ooh, that stings, today especially. But
what are you talking about?
The women's U.S. team was always better. So, and they're still in it, and they're more fun to watch.
Sure.
So let's take soccer, right? There are tons of people who play soccer and are not paid. They do it because it's fun or because their children and their parents are forcing them to. Not to bring up any suppressed sports memories that I may or may not have. But then there are people who get paid to do it because they're very good at it and it entertains others when they do it. And I think there's nothing wrong with the same thing happening to our world. I don't think there's going to be like a slippery slope where every GM is going to demand to be paid. There will still be people who do it for free, but people who are amazing, like yourself, who are giving up time to do it, who are giving up actual paid work to go do it, if you can be compensated, you should be compensated. That's kind of how I see it.
Thanks for saying that. I'm great at it. That's a truly compliment coming from you, man. In the end, I decided that I'm not going to charge for every game. Like if somebody came up to me, had a group and was like, look, we're a bunch of students. We have no money, because I truly appreciate that. Then I would be like, well, yeah, I can run you a game. I can't run you another campaign because I simply don't have the time. And that's why I'm kind of doing the paid thing. It's kind of like there's a shoe company in the States, Zudo. I'm saying it wrong.
You are talking to the wrong person about shoe companies.
It's okay. No, it's okay. So basically what it is they guarantee a certain sort of customer satisfaction, and they offer their employees up to $2,000 to quit within the first 3 months because they want to sort of weed out the people who really don't want to be there. So for me, that's kind of, it sounds really almost a little bit arrogant, but it's not meant that way. It's more like, if you're willing to pay, then I know that you're going to be at every single game that I run, unless you're sick, right? Like, so I'm not going to waste my time and your time prepping for a game that no one's going to show up for. So it kind of helps weed that out. So I have consistency for my games, which really helps me when I have to do homework around it, and I have to work around it, and I have to do all these other things that we do in life around these things. So it's a way for me to kind of like balance that out, still make enough money to pay for my hobby, which is kind of my goal in the end, right? Like if I have more money to spend on more books, my games are just going to be better, because I can tap into the Tomb of Annihilation, which is amazing, and pull out like a tomb that I can just toss at my characters, even if it's a homebrew. they can use the archaeologist as a background, right? I couldn't do that if I wasn't getting paid for it because I wouldn't have the money to buy these books. So that's kind of, it's a balance I find. It took me a couple months to really accept it. And it took my friends like, no, look, we will help you set this up. So I had friends help me set up my website. And then I ended up taking classes in school to help me do exactly what I'm doing now. So I'm a communications major, which means that I work hard on like social aspects of policy work, and things like GamerX kind of tie really into communications as far as how it affects society. So what I did was I took classes like publishing yourself online. And so I've redone my entire website on my own. I've learned CSS and a little bit of HTML, and yeah, like it's been pretty hardcore. So I'm learning new skills as I do this, and it all happened because I decided to challenge myself in sort of, I guess, the gaming world, right? Like there are not a lot of pro GMs, and I you couldn't see me, but I quotation marked myself when I said pro. I only use pro because I'm getting paid for it. So technically it is a job and it is a profession, right? So, but I don't consider myself better than anyone else. Like I game at Gen Con. Baldman Games had 80 tables last year? That's 80 GMs, and that's just in one slot. So there's no way that I am like better than anyone else. Like that's just a fact, you know?
Sure. But at the same time, you're approaching this as a business, right? You're approaching it the way someone
Very
would,
much so.
And as opposed to just like, I don't know, saying to anybody who comes up to you, well, it's going to cost you $50 for me to, it's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you're studying different things to do to build a business and to be part of this community. Do you feel when you are doing a paid gig, do you feel more pressure to deliver an enjoyable, like satisfying game experience than you do if you're giving it to a group who hasn't paid?
I did for about 5 minutes until my roommate looked at me. He plays in my one of my the Loose Ends podcast. He just looked at me one day. He's like, "Are you working on our game?" I'm like, "Yep." He goes, "God, you do that all the time. Why?" I'm like, "Well, because I'm always needing to do better. So that one I don't get paid for. And I am extremely hard on myself as a GM. I need that player sort of like, that was a great game. Otherwise I question it consistently. Like it's something I need to work on, but it's like, definitely, I take all of my games incredibly seriously. As far as like, when I say seriously, I don't sit at the table and go, "You did that wrong, bad you." It's more like, if they're not having fun, it was not a good game. That's where my seriousness comes in. So regardless of whether it's a paid game or not, if you're not, like you say at the end of all your podcasts, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And I that is like preach, brother. Every time you say that, I'm like, amen.
Yeah. And I've heard a lot of other people say that, right? And it goes both ways, right? Because I do think there are people who do bad, wrong, fun, right? And it's like, no, if they're having fun, then they're playing the game the way the game should be played for them, right? And then there's people who I think, and I'm the same way, I put, after a game that I have run, if it wasn't like the most spectacular thing ever, I'm like, okay, what can I do differently next time? How do I amp this up? That kind of thing, and approach it that way. And sometimes get very down on myself for like, seems like everybody only had a moderate level of fun, right?
Yeah. Yes. Oh God, it drives me crazy. And then you have that one player who always tells you, "That was such a great game." I'm like, yeah, it starts to wear off. But you know that they're sincere when they say
sure.
it. That your head plays tricks with you, right? Yay for being a little bit OCD with your games.
Yeah. It's like when you've been with someone for a long time and they tell you you're good looking, you're like, well, now you're just saying that because we've been together for 2 years, and now, yeah,
you're saying that because you have
right,
to.
Exactly. So how do you find folks willing to pay for games? Like how do you get out there and reach customers who want a game master?
I use every single moment of my day to promote myself. And I truly mean that. I have no problem and no shame in the sense that I completely whore myself out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, really. I try and be professional about it, and I'm pretty decent at picking up social cues. So if I can see that somebody does that sort of glaze over thing, then I won't push it, right? Like you're just like, okay, well, here it is. But I work at a gaming store, so they allow me, when somebody's like talking games, I can give them my card and be like, hey, if you're interested, get in touch. My overall goal with the GM Tim isn't just to run games and get paid. I actually really want to create like a GM hub, like a group. GMs are few and far between for any system, and we don't dabble into other systems enough as a GM. You get hardcore into D&D and then you don't look at other games. You get hardcore into Star Wars and then maybe you might do another game, but you'd never do Star Trek. And I think that we're all losing out on that. My games for 5th edition got way better when I did like Edge of the Empire by Fantasy Flight because of the narrative aspect of that game, right? And I think that we can kind of create this GM hub where people can group together. So anytime somebody comes into the store and starts buying D&D DM books or buys an Icons book or buys Fate, I'll be like, hey, here's my card. Get in touch. I want to do this as a GM. And if you want to play sometime, I do this as a side job. So come and play. And then even at work, at school, everywhere I go, I have no problem giving you my card and being like, I do this as a profession. I'm very proud of the fact that I am a GM, and I'm very, very proud to be a gamer. I was always like that. I was always very much willing to talk about games, even in the late 80s, early 90s when it was like, nerd. Now I'm hardcore. I'm still very proud of it. I think it's something that we should all celebrate. Yeah. And if people start to question it, my kind of fight back with it, well, not fight back, my response, if people question why I'm paying for it, my response is, how many movies do you go see in a month? And usually they answer 2 to 4, right? A lot of people go to movies at least twice a month. Not this summer. It was a horrible summer, but
I can tell you're still in university because when you have friends who start taking care of other people, that number goes way down. But yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. But nonetheless, even if it's once a month, you go to a movie, right? That's still $15 just for the movie. Then it's another $15 to $20 for the pop and popcorn and anything else you're going to buy that night. If you're going to cab there, it's another $10 to $20. So you've just spent upwards of $40 to $70 to go see a 2-hour movie that you may or may not like.
Very true.
I'm giving you 4 hours of entertainment that I guarantee you will like. You may not live, but you will like. Your character may die because the dice roll where they roll, but I'm guaranteeing that you will have at least a good time for 3 to 4 hours for $10 every 2 weeks. That's nothing, that's kind of my response. It's the $10 is a guarantee that you're going to have a good time where you can forget everything for 3 to 4 hours and just enjoy your game.
Yeah, I love that. And I also, I try to apply that logic to role-playing game products, right? If I'm going to buy an adventure, you can get a 2-hour Adventurers League adventure for $2.99. That's going to entertain 7 people or 8 people in some cases for 2 hours. You can't beat that. There's nowhere else you can get that much entertainment for that free or for that cheap.
No, and we have this weird obsession with the fact that we can pay $60 to $80 for a damn video game that you're going to play through once and then never touch again. But we freak out when you have to pay $60 for a book, for a gaming book that you're going to play for over and over and over. I'm sitting right next to my shelf right now. I still have 3.5 edition books from Eberron. That's what, 10 years ago now?
I still have mine too.
I've got Saga. I have the Lug Trek Star Trek book. Last Unicorn Games. It's ratty and falling apart, and it's one of my prized possessions. I live for that game. That's my thing, right? I spent money on these, but I still have them. I bought the new Pokemon Sun last year. I've played through it. I haven't touched my DS since I finished. That was January, right? So we got to get over this hub that we have that this is not a paid thing. And I don't understand why when somebody does do paid stuff, all of a sudden they're kind of given that they're paid. Why? Yes, I'm paid. I'm proud of it. I work hard to get paid.
Yeah.
If I were taking away from free games that were happening, I don't know how I would, but if I were, I would try and work with that GM to make it work for both of us, right? Like, hey, how about I make sure that I don't run my game? I've even done this. I have friends who want to play with me and they have other games. So I'm like, okay, well, here's other nights when you guys don't play so I can balance it out. Then I don't take away from your party because I never, ever want to interrupt another game.
This idea that people have, like you said too, about other games and about not paying for games is very interesting. Like the world of, in particular, tabletop role-playing games is too small for people to have such hardcore stances, and it's not going to get any bigger if people don't pay for their stuff.
Well, it's not going to get any bigger if we're always out to get everyone else. We must, as a collective group of GMs and players alike, we absolutely have to be willing to answer those silly questions. We have to be willing to show them that we're not that 1980s stereotype of basement dwellers that don't have any social skills, because that's just not true. And it needs to be, we kind of have to make sure that we're the ones doing the work. It's not like that's just the way I see it. I don't think that for everything, but for gaming, to get it out there, to make sure that it can continue to grow, because it is growing and it's growing quite fast. And there's lots of sociological reasons why, but it needs to take all of us. We can't do it with just one or two people going, well, I don't like this system. Like that whole edition wars thing just needs to stop. It just needs to stop. Like now.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, I don't care. I mean, you know, I'll come play Fourth, I'll come play First, I'll come play Mutants and Masterminds, I'll come play Fate, I'll play anything if it's a role-playing game, because at the core, you know, there's this idea of play and telling a story together with your friends, which is really what I want to get down to. And I think you're right. Exploring other systems makes you better in the system that you normally play. Once a year, I try to get together with a bunch of my friends, and we play a bunch of different games for a weekend, you know, and it's like, okay, you know, this person's going to run a one shot of this, and this person's going to run a one shot of this, and we try to play new stuff that we've never played before. And it's just so refreshing and amazing. And then when I go to Gen Con, I try to play different games because I get to play D&D all the time. And so, like, you know, I'm totally with you. I do think it expands. And it's also then when you decide, like, I really want to try Fate, but I'm going to go to, you know, 4chan and steal it, or I'm going to go here and yada yada. Now, Fate has an open system. You can grab those rolls for free because they're giving them to you. That's different, right? But if you're stealing something, it's like, oh man, just buy the PDF from this person and, you know, give up 2 lattes during the week, and you've got your $10 for that PDF or something. Hey everybody, James Introcaso here. Just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about our sponsor for Tabletop Babble, Kobold Press. I love Kobold Press, and you should too. They're the makers of great products. I'm talking about Deep Magic. I'm talking about Tome of Beasts. I'm talking about the Midgard campaign setting. And now they have this amazing Patreon that you can check out at patreon.com/koboldpress for Warlock. Warlock is more dark fantasy for 5th edition D&D. Right now, they have put out 2 zines with amazing content, everything from new character options to new rules for DMs, monsters, magic items, and now, in addition to that, they are putting out 2, count them, 2 mini adventures a month. The first is the Clattering Keep. It's already out. It's already amazing. As a contributor to this Patreon, I have it. It's called The Clattering Keep. It's by John Sawatsky. He wrote Prepared and Prepared 2 for Kobold Press, so this guy knows his way around mini adventures. It's pretty awesome. Future installments are going to be by amazing game designers like friend of the show, James Hake. Dyson Logos will be creating all of the maps, so you know they're going to be amazing quality. Plus, they're not just layers. You get new magic items and new monsters in everything. It's pretty incredible. Check it out at patreon.com/koboldpress. That's patreon.com/koboldpress. I'm a patron there. I can vouch for it. The content is amazing. All right, back to the show. So let's talk a little bit about paid GMing. Like, what are your top 3 pieces of advice you think you have for people who want to be paid GMs?
Don't be afraid to do it. That's number 1. It's easily something that you can talk yourself out of it. Don't be afraid to do it. Try and balance out the amount of time that you're going to be doing it with how much you think you should be paid. There is other people I know of who charge way more and do like corporate gigs. And even one of the people that I know who's kind of mentoring me through monetizing stuff that I'm doing said that I'm charging too little. And my response was, I need it to be accessible for as many people as possible. Like I'm a firm believer that your time is precious, but you can always raise your prices as you need to, or have a scale pay. Like you can do that, but start a little bit low and then work your way up. Prove yourself to this group that's paying you X amount. And then if you need to, you can always up it, but you can do that with them. Don't be afraid to take a module, change NPCs, change names, change location, and just run through the module. There's nothing wrong or dirty with not having every single homebrew game you make come directly from your head. And the third, and this is kind of like my sort of prime piece of advice for any GM, regardless of whether or not you want to get paid for it, don't be afraid to let the players take narrative control. It's a super easy thing. There are a few things more rewarding for a GM than to have the players create the whole scenario in 20 minutes of them talking with each other and laughing with each other and having you sit there and just let it happen. And suddenly you'll have a page of like side quests and notes and things they came up with because they said silly stuff that you can suddenly just do. One of the games last night that I ran, actually, one of the rogue elf. She's a rogue half elf or high elf. They ran into a triceratops and they went and she snuck off and decided to go find its nest. Found 2 eggs and a baby triceratops and snagged them. And then presented them later on. And later on that night, I had another random encounter. So I brought that Triceratops back and they gave back the baby, which was probably wise. But I'm going to bring that back in later games, right? So now I've got this note. They've got this baby Triceratops that's going to be able to make like a recurring appearance. And it'll have this whole connection to this sort of silly moment that'll be really cool. Same with a goblin they killed. They named him, then killed him all in one episode. So he's going to come back as a zombie because heck, why not? It's things like that. Let the players create the game that you are running, regardless of whether or not it's a module or not. The fact that you're paid as a GM just means that you have to be more aware of their entertainment. So all those things allow you to do that.
Absolutely. It took me forever to learn your last point in particular about, you're really facilitating how the world responds to the players. You're not really steering the story so much as they're steering the story in the world you're creating and reacting to them. And they're even creating the world with you. And I do think when players do something, right, when they do something unexpected, that is them telling you, I would like to take the story in this direction now,
Without actually telling you that. They won't even know that you've done that to them. They just suddenly see that you've done that. I have a GMing Yoda. So the guy who got me into GMing, his name is Brian. To this day, I don't know a GM who's better than he is. His ability to pull a story out of his ass is like godlike. It's incredible. And it was because he would listen to the stuff that we were saying, and suddenly we would roll a 1 and someone would be like, oh my God, this is so going to happen. Or, like you verbalize all those negative possibilities of how your character is going to happen. And then he'll look at you and go, that's exactly what happened. How did you know? And suddenly your player is like, oh my God, I figured it out. Right. When really they just actually created it for you, and just watching him do that seriously, he's my Yoda. I'm his Obi-Wan.
It is such a hard thing to learn if you've been playing from the time you were a young child, because I think as young children, we develop bad habits that sort of stick with us then. So that is...
Well, no, I disagree. It's not that it's a bad habit. Do you know what it is? I firmly believe this. It's that we live in a narrative world. We live in a world where movies have a beginning and a middle and an end. Our books have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when we come down to play these games, we have this already preconceived notion that there needs to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I honestly challenge anyone listening right now. Have you ever had an actual homebrew campaign that had a beginning, a middle, and an end, because I haven't. It's rare to have an end to a campaign when you have a long-term game, because you just want to keep playing. So you're going to come up with a new reason why you might have an end to an arc, but that's not the end to the campaign. And I think that's why we have it in our heads that we need this, when really we should have a great beginning and then enjoy the middle. That's it.
Yeah, that is so true. If all you're doing is trying to rocket towards the end, then just play one-shots because,
Right. Run a bunch of modules. See, that's the beauty of the Adventures League, because they have beginnings, middles, and ends, but even they don't really have ends. Like, even if you play all the way up to tier 4, there's still room to go. Like, it's not the end of the story. It might be the end of the season, but you can play that character in other seasons. So is it really the end? No. Ooh.
Yeah. So, and that's the big appeal, right, of the Adventurers League too, is that you can create this character who has fought Tiamat and is taking on the, elemental evil princes and is taking on the demons in the Underdark. So, like, I think you're right. Enjoying the middle is a huge, huge part of that. And now with that, we should talk about, you said you have 3 podcasts. You're, I would say, sort of new to this podcasting thing. Your podcasts sound great. They are amazing. They're so much fun. If people love actual plays, they should definitely check them out. Loose Ends is a ton of fun. And they're super digestible too. Are you the one editing these things? Because they sound great.
Yeah, I am.
Wow. Where do you have the time? When do you have the time?
I don't know. I don't have a life.
It sounds like you have the perfect life.
Yeah. So I'm fairly new, I guess. So my Star Wars podcast was my delve into podcasts, and it was with a group that is now playing the Skyfire comics. The group of us got together, gosh, it had to have been almost 3 years ago now. I think we've been playing together. We decided, hey, let's try this, because it was when Edge of the Empire was fairly new. So we started playing it, and we decided that let's podcast this. So I actually, the Sky on Fire, the Star Wars podcast, it's recorded on my old phone. It sat behind us, and it would just record raw, and then I would edit the hell out of it to get rid of any buzzing. And it aired through 2015 and 2016. And then I took a hiatus because of school. It just got in the way, and I had to break. And then I came back, and I'm like, okay, well, I took 3 classes instead of 4, and I scaled things back, and I got back from Australia where I did a year abroad. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's try this again. So I started up a D&D group, and we call ourselves the Loose Ends. And it's all a bunch of gay boys. We have way too much fun. I love them. They're one of my favorite. All my groups are I could not have better groups. I am truly, truly blessed and always humbled at how much fun I have gaming with my groups. It's something else. So the podcasts, though, what are you normally doing when you listen to podcasts?
So I'm usually running or doing laundry or doing work around the house or that kind of thing. They are indeed the cultural wallpaper. And driving, definitely.
Cool, yeah. For me, I'm always on transit and commuting, right? That's like the key thing. And have you ever been in the middle of a podcast where you're just and you get to your destination and you're like, ah, damn it, there's 12 more minutes to go. What am I can't.
All the time.
Yeah. So that drives me absolutely batty, especially when I normally get to the school and I can't keep listening. So I tried to time my podcasts for the exact amount of commute time it takes me to get from my house to the university. So all of my podcasts are no more than 45 minutes. There might be the odd one, and no less than about 25 minutes, because otherwise it's a little too short and it feels cheated. So that's where my kind of time frame comes in. The recording, my Loose Ends group got me a Zoom H1 hand recorder, and that's what all of my podcasts are recorded on now. That's what I'm actually talking to you on right now. It's a beautiful machine. I recommend it for anyone. It just sits on a boom, and it hangs over top of the table. Yeah, and then I edit. I'm super picky with my edit. You've heard ums throughout this conversation, and I edit a lot of those out of my game. I also tend to try and like find that nice balance. And then the key thing that I did for me was both Loose Ends and Skyfire Comics. I purchased music. Like I actually went and bought a license and purchased the music for those songs because they are amazing. And you just can't find. You can get some decent stuff, but I really wanted to kind of like. There are so many podcasts of live play games out there that if I was going to do one, I needed something that was going to be like, no, I'm dead serious about this, right? Because you got to be able to listen and enjoy it. So I found podcast music that was just perfect. It's both written by the same person. It's so good.
When I listened to the first episode of Loose Ends and the music started, it just immediately takes you off and you're like, whoa, we're going on an adventure. This is awesome. I can't wait. Like, it is really good music.
Yeah, it was awesome. I jumped up and down when I heard the music, actually. Like, I was full on excited. It was great. Yeah. And so then I tried what we're doing actually tonight, we're going to record a recap episode because we've been playing for actually a year and a half. But we've only got like, I think 10 episodes out, and the episodes are coming out once a week, but we're recording as we go now. And the old stuff just kind of sits on my computer because it was recorded before we got the boom. So you always hear like that thud every time somebody touches the table. So we might release those as like a Patreon for like, hey, if you want the year in review, then you can get these. And we haven't decided yet. We're debating that still. But we are going to do a recap tonight. And I want all of my group, each of them are going to record an intro. And the other thing we just realized was that we're one of the only queer podcasts out there. There are a few, but they're really hard to find. So we decided that we're going to kind of push that aspect. It is an all-male cast, and we admit that. We do have guest appearances by friends of ours who come in and play, and often they are female. But we have a very diverse cast. We've got somebody who's First Nations. We've got somebody who is Filipino descent. We've got somebody who's from Central America, and then 3 guys from North America. So, like we're pretty diverse, and we wanted to try and make sure that we acknowledging the fact that we don't want to just be another white people podcast because there are more people listening to podcasts than just that, So when I do accents, I'm trying to be very aware that I don't take something that's super stereotypical, right? So unfortunately, so far, all of mine sound very much the same, like I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm working on it, so.
First of all, that is true of me. I have about 4 voices inside of me, and they're all the same voice. Yeah.
The How to Do Voices podcast you did was like genius.
That was a lot of fun. That was really fun, and I would love to. And this is going to be a whole other podcast between me and you because we're running short on time and you're amazing. So I'm definitely going to have you back. And I'd like to have a panel back to sort of talk about the LGBTQ community around gaming because there are a ton of amazing gamers out there who are part of this community. And thank goodness that the community is... It seems from my closed, straight, white guy perspective, right, that it seems like the community is becoming more open despite some people's best efforts to keep it closed. But I'd love to talk with you about that because I think you do some amazing work. You're like the Johnny Appleseed of gaming. You're getting everybody you meet, it sounds like, to play games, which is incredible. And I know you also do a lot of work in this community. You're Gamer X is a big part of what you're doing. I'd love to come to that convention. I really got to get up to Canada. It's a magical land.
Well, GamerX is actually in California. And then right now, actually, if you're listening, go to gamerx.com and get tickets for GamerX East, which is happening in New York in November.
Oh, really? Okay. That's awesome.
November 4th, 5th, 6th, Microsoft building, downtown New York in Times Square.
Wow.
There are limited tickets, so go there. And my GamerX East counterpart, Eugenio, actually runs... I'm sure I'm saying his name incorrectly, and I so apologize, but he runs the tabletop RPG games for GamerX East. I do GamerX West in California. And hopefully, if cards are right, secret maybe revealed, I might be doing a GamerX Vancouver.
Whoa.
But yeah, but that's like still like very, maybe there's a lot behind that. So
Gotcha.
I have to wait till done school and then we'll look at it. But, yeah.
Well, it's a thing that I think is amazing. I think growing the gaming community is a great thing. And I think a space that has at least been thought of, and it seems statistically traditionally dominated by straight white cis dudes. It's great to see, like, I know people whose minds are being changed because they are sitting down to play games at a table with someone who doesn't look exactly like them, or who doesn't have the same religious view as them, or who
will bring something completely different to the game that you can only pretend about, but you can't actually experience until you've experienced it. I'll tell you what. So if you really want to be a willing member, then things you can do as a GM, regardless of whether or not you're straight, white, or anything else, is introduce the X card into your games. You put a card on the table that just basically has an X. And if anyone at the table has anything that they are uncomfortable with at all, if they could be scared of spiders and you bring a giant spider into the game, and they will lift up the X card, and without any question at all or comment or anything, you simply change it from spiders to bees. Doesn't matter, because that is uncomfortable for them. And you want to make sure that the game is enjoyable for everyone. And you don't question it at all. And if the person is willing, at the end of the game, privately, to say to you, hey, just so you know, I had this thing with spiders. I had one stuck in my ear and it freaked me out forever. And now when you do it, it makes me really uncomfortable. Then you can remove that from the game. And you now know not to bring that back in. The X card is genius. It's so cool. Then that's something you can do as a straight white cis dude to allow other people to know that your games will be safe and encouraging and comfortable. And the fact that you even have asked that question, and the fact that you are aware of your privilege as a white male, like, that's enough. That's not enough, but it's a step, and it's a major step. And I struggle with it. I'm a gay white male, but I'm still a white male, right? So I have to remember that I do have certain privileges, and being aware of those and learning what they are yourself rather than expecting somebody else to tell you what they are has been one of the most difficult lessons I've had to learn, but I am learning it. And that's key, is that there are not enough people willing to learn it. They just sit there and say, well, it's not my problem, it's theirs. Why am I being left out now? Well, you're being left out because we've left other people out for the last 40 years of the damn industry, right? So it's time to change that. It's time to change. You know what it is? It's either put out or get out. Like, it really is at the point now where there are no more excuses. There are no more excuses. And it's the same with nostalgia, with our geekdom. Like, people are this crap with the Rick and Morty bullshit in McDonald's. Like, both parties are completely at odds. And it's just like, what are you doing? Or people complaining about superhero movies. Like, why are you complaining about something that we as kids used to dream of? Like, we used to watch these as kids, regardless of whether or not they are like paid advertisements in the 80s for us. It doesn't matter. We used to sit there going, God, I cannot wait to see this in a movie. And now we can. And instead of celebrating it as a possible difference in how the genre comes out, we bitch about it. Shut up and let people enjoy things. Things like Will and Grace, even, which I absolutely love. I really hope that they learned their lesson from the 90s, where the person of color who was gay was often the line of like a gimmick. It was so I really hope that they have figured that out. There's nothing wrong with having a cast who's come back, but be aware of that fact. There's nothing wrong with being white. There's nothing wrong with not being white. There's nothing wrong with being a minority or a majority until the majority starts to treat the minority differently. And that's the problem. The majority can't do that. So if you are doing that at your games, you are wrong. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. You cannot treat them differently simply because they are different. That's it. That's the end that's the end. And if you don't understand that, then you need to learn why. It's not anyone's job to educate you. It is your job to take on that education. And even at university, that's how it is. I can go to university and I can pay tens of thousands tens of thousands of dollars to go to university. But until I take that responsibility to accept what I'm learning at university, it won't matter.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Tim, you are an amazing human being, and I would love to listen to you all day. It's so amazing and inspiring, and you're so smart. You're just so intelligent, but also so eloquent, and you are an amazing game master. I have seen you run games. I have not had the privilege to play at your table, but so hopefully we can fix that. I'd love to have you back on the show again to talk about pretty much anything. So before we do go, though, tell the people out there, where can they find you?
I am on the GM Tim, TheGMTim, at Twitter, Instagram, gmail.com if you want to email me, and go to my website, thegmtim.ca, and you can read my blogs. Some of the stuff that I talk about, I'm actually preparing as blog posts. I'm going to try and actually do like the GM groups. So eventually I'm going to be doing workshops, and I'm going to be doing like who knows, maybe I'll make an app, how to find a GM. I mean, if we can do it for Grindr, we can do it for gaming. Come on, guys. We got enough out there. thegmtim.ca is my website. And then the podcasts are Loose Ends. It's a D&D, Sky on Fire, and that's a Star Wars podcast, and Skyfire Comics, which is Icon's roleplay. Oh, and then I'll be hosting, sorry, I forgot. I'm GMing season 4 of Roll to Hit. They're a longtime podcast on the Comatous Network, which is where I drop all my podcasts, and they've invited me to host season 4. So I'll be putting those through and actually selling the modules on the Guild as they come out. And they should be coming out. We start recording next week, and they should be coming out probably around January. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. We first delve into modules.
That's amazing. I can't wait to check those out. And we will link everything over in the show notes over at don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com. Tim, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, James. Love you lots, man.
Everybody, that was a great interview, right? We are definitely going to have Tim back and talk about some more awesomeness. In the meantime, you can help other people listen to this interview and all of the great interviews on Tabletop Babble by heading on over to iTunes and leaving us a review. Seriously, even if you don't listen to the show via iTunes, go make an account. It's free. Rate me, and then rate all of the other podcasts. It helps other people find us, not just in the iTunes podcatcher app, but in many podcatcher apps across the apposphere. Plus, if you leave us a 5-star review, I will read it verbatim here on air. You can make me say anything you want. Today's 5-star review comes from Gamer in Fredonia. Gamer in Fredonia. And it is entitled, "Content This Insightful is No Babble." Thank you very much. I'm already into this, Gamer in Fredonia. And Gamer in Fredonia says, "I don't have time to listen to many RPG podcasts, but Tabletop Babble is one that I always make the time for. I am generally in search of new ideas, new takes, and new ways to look at the world of RPG gaming. The variety of guests that James, that's me, brings to the table means I am never disappointed. The topics are always fresh and relevant. The guests are in tune with the RPG scene, and I have never failed to learn something new. Whether you are an RPG player, a GM, a super fan of the industry, or an industry insider, there's always something worthwhile on TTB." Thank you so much, Gamer in Fredonia. People, go leave us a review if you want to put words into my mouth. You can follow me on Twitter at James Introcaso, INTROCASO, and you can check out all of the cool game design work I am doing over at worldbuilderblog.me. There are going to be so many announcements this year. I'm telling you, crazy, crazy stuff that I feel so privileged to have gotten to work on. You are going to hear all about it, so check it out over at worldbuilderblog.me. You know, Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network, but we're not the only thing there. I want to recommend that you go on and check out Venture Maidens. If you haven't been listening to Venture Maidens, What's wrong? It's an amazing D&D 5e actual play podcast that has no dudes. But they are an amazing group, amazing storytellers, really, really fun. You can listen back from episode 1. That's what I recommend doing because that's the best. But if you don't want to hit all the backlog, they do have a review episode where you can start from. It's great. Wrap-up review of the episodes that have come before, and then go from there. They are really, really incredible. They just, oh man, and they're so much fun, and they're so funny, so check them out, the Venture Maidens, over at Don'tSplitThePodcastNetwork.com. Don't Split the Podcast Network was founded by myself and Rudy Basso. He is the man. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by BattleBards. Don't forget that RPGs are like sex. The more prep you do, the more pressure you'll put on yourself.
Party 13, let's suit up for adventure.
They're the only ones that can save the world.
What?
A fantasy world of magic, monsters, and heroes.
Yeah, hello? Where's that voice coming from?
Heroes like Andar Patron, the star of our story.
Yeah, that's me, but what are you talking about?
Oh, sorry. We're in a promo for your podcast. Did nobody tell you?
What?
Your podcast. Have Spellbook Will Travel?
Have Spellbook?
It's a scripted fantasy comedy audio drama based on the creator's experiences playing tabletop games.
To be honest, that sounds pretty boring.
Well, it's hilarious, and heartwarming, and great, super great.
Whatever you say, buddy.
Have Spellbook Will Travel on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Start the adventure at havespellbook.com or wherever podcasts are available for free.